Good morning and welcome to the SitRep for today, which is the 18th of November 2022. Still ticking along, still getting through this year very rapidly, in fact. Welcome to the SitRep. For those who haven't joined this before, this is where I go through news stories that I found interesting over the past 24 hours or however long and pull them apart from the perspective of being a more prepared individual. So thank you for joining me, because that shows me that you are somebody who gives a shit about where we're heading to in the future and is not necessarily fretting and rubbing their hands together going, oh no, the future. You are actually taking positive action towards that and looking towards what you can do as an individual, as a member of a family, as a member of a community, to help make all those concentric circles safer, better, and more prepared for what's coming down the pipeline in the future. So what is coming down the pipeline? Actually, there wasn't a lot of stories this morning, and I wasn't going to do one. Wasn't even going to do a sit rep, and I thought I'll just jump in and do a quick one. Throw up a few interesting things that I think are worthwhile talking about. So yeah, what are we at? Friday, it's a sunny day. I'm going to go out into the garden today and get some gardening done, as we are in spring here in the Southern Hemisphere. So getting all the things lined up, all the veggies in, check my little seedlings for my tomato plants, see if they've come up yet. Hopefully six or seven varieties I've put in this year. So see what sticks. There are people who are very good at gardening. I do not count myself as one of them. I'm more of a shotgun approach. I'm more of like a throw everything at the wall and see what sticks kind of gardener. But the joys of gardening. This is this is what I do. Anyway, wherever you are in the world, I hope you're doing well. I hope you are safe and happy and doing whatever you're going to do today to help prepare. All right, let's jump into it today. This one I thought was really interesting. 8 billion human being has been born in the Philippines, apparently. Not too far away from here, from my neck of the woods. I'm not really sure how you'd pick that. How you like? Is there a big counter somewhere? Is there like some sort of huge database that all the medical professionals are looking at? No, I think this is a bit of a fluff piece, really. But apparently, we have ticked over to 8 billion people, which was interesting because I've been saying this for a little while now, probably about. I want to say maybe I started talking about this sort of stuff 18 months ago, talking about 8 billion people on the face of the earth. And a lot of people were like, no, it's 7 billion or it's 7.1 or something. I'm like, you do realize that it's going up at the moment, that we will hit 8 billion. So I think that'll be a little bit of a shock for people, 8 billion human beings. But that's where we're at the moment. Watching an interesting piece of modern media at the moment, TV show called The Peripheral, and it is alluding to that sometime, like it's talking about the future. So people from the future are talking to people in the past, and there's a big difference between those 2 points. And they talk about this catastrophe that happens in between them. And they've actually got a little counter there, and it started at 8 billion something people. Thought, yeah, that's interesting. Anyway, we're over 8 billion people. So there you go. You are now that kind of unique snowflake, 1 in 8 billion human beings. Cool, huh? Let's jump into shortages. I got 2 about shortages this morning. There was actually a lot of stuff about shortages, and I was just like, oh man, I'm actually getting a little bit washed on the shortages stuff. If we don't get it by now, then we're not going to get it. But it's worthwhile keeping your eye on these sort of shortages so we can understand what sort of things we might want to gear towards. By the way, I did mention shortages on my last one. And one of the things I mentioned was amoxicillin, which is a broad spectrum antibiotic. And I said, if you can get your hands on antibiotics, you should definitely do so. Well, somebody on Instagram messaged me and said, hey, here is where I get these sorts of things from. And I've had no issues getting it here in Australia. So I'm going to give that a try. If that works for me, then I'll probably put that information out to anyone who wants to know where to get that from. So thank you very much to that individual who sent me that particular message. I very much appreciate that kind of stuff. Chris Fleming on YouTube. Howdy. Just says hi. Hi this morning. Yeah, so when I was talking about the amoxicillin stuff, it was with a whole suite of other things that were in short supply, and that this particular news source, which was Grey Man Briefing, was looking at possibly having being taken off the shelves or increasing in price, or both, more likely. But it was all US sort of centric sort of stuff. As I've said many times, I think here in Australia and New Zealand, to a certain extent, we're insulated a little bit from these sort of things. But I think one thing we are going to see in the future is less diversity within the things that we can actually buy. So if you walk into your average supermarket nowadays, obviously you are confronted, or I feel confronted at least, by an avalanche of brands, of varieties, of different types of things, which can be crippling. I often call it the tyranny of choice that we have nowadays. I think that will start to actually pare down. We'll see less and less of that happening, as a lot of the things we get into Australia can be from overseas. So we'll start to see, if supply chains continue sort of going the way that supply chains are going, companies keep going the way things are going, and especially areas of the world keep going the way they're going, where they're going to actually have to pull in products, i.e. maybe the US, probably Europe, and definitely Africa, are going to start saying, look, we cannot export stuff anymore. We just cannot. We need to feed our own people here. And so the effect for the average Aussie and New Zealander will just be less stuff on the shelves, and usual sort of inflation that we're heading down anyway. Take the Ride on YouTube. Good morning to you, although I am quite well aware it's not morning for you, where you are in the world. It says you can buy fish amoxicillin and fish doxycycline, which is another broad spectrum antibiotic. Doxycycline, just a fun little FYI, doxycycline is one of those broad spectrum antibiotics that you can allegedly have somebody on for an extended period of time. I know this because I have done it. Getting sent over to Afghanistan with the military, they said, hey, here's a whole heap of things. We're injecting you with every vaccine we can known to man, including the Black Plague. But we can't stop malaria, and malaria is there. So we're going to give you doxycycline. And so for 4 months, I was on doxycycline, and I can tell you, like, it does have effects. Don't try it at home, kids, all right? Listen to Uncle Gads. I've tried it. It wasn't fun. It makes you very sensitive to light, and I was there during summer, so you can imagine, like, the photosensitivity that was going on within me. Also, it gives you crazy vivid dreams, which, when you're in a war zone, isn't like a really great thing to be having. I'd rather just have like blank sleep. But anyway, enough about that. Doxycycline is still a good option for broad spectrum antibiotic if you're in a pinch, right? If you need antibiotics, I'm still a believer that if you require it, then it should be something that you have access to. So amoxicillin, doxycycline, you can get both of these as animal, primarily fish versions, and you can usually get them from fish stores. However, personally in Australia, I have asked in some fish stores, and they do go, like, they ask a lot of questions, they push back a bit. So I think there is an undercurrent where they might have got the word out that, hey, if somebody comes in and they look like they might have they might be the kind of person who wears a tinfoil hat when they're at home by themselves, or they might have a bunker, or they're wearing checkered shirts and look like they split wood a lot, question them about the amoxicillin. Make sure you question them about it. So just be warned of that. And Take the Ride very correctly says, good things to have around, good bartering tool if needed. Absolutely. Like, I agree. And these sorts of things, I've said this in the past, feel free to argue with me on this if you want, but they can last a lot longer than what their little use by date says on them. It's not like on that use by date, the antibiotic properties of those drugs just evaporate and disappear, or it switches and becomes toxic. that's not what happens. There's a sort of a slow, gentle curve where they become, or the efficacy of those actual drugs lessens. So if you're using it 10 years after the use by date, the chances of it actually working for you is pretty minimal. However, it's not zero. So I will caveat this: I'm not a doctor, so if take that as it is. I am just a talking head on the internet at the moment, talking about that sort of stuff. So that's something to think about, though. You can actually store these things a little bit longer than modern pharmacies would have you believe, especially if you take the efforts, you take the pains to store these things correctly. Peter Rouse says a lot less stuff on shelves. Let me put a pin in that for a second, Peter, because you say something very interesting here about antibiotics. Silver hydrosol works really well if you don't have antibiotics. I have zero clue about that. So, Peter, you and I need to have a conversation about this, because I know you are quite an intelligent human being and you can probably teach me a lot about this. So I would love to know about this, and I'll try and research that as well. Silver hydrosol. If anyone else has any information on that, please let me know. But that could be a good thing here if that's an option outside of antibiotics as well. All right, let's come back to this a lot less stuff on shelves. Peter Rouse, who is in New Zealand. Can I ask you the question, is that what you're seeing right now in New Zealand? Peter's going to drop me an email. Cool. Is that what you're seeing in New Zealand? Because, yeah, I'd love to know that. Anecdotally, I mean, I'm in a relatively small town, so it's not uncommon for me to have less things on the shelves week to week. That's always been the way it is. They might not have got something in this week's delivery, and so it's just not there. The shelves are usually relatively stocked up, but if something's not there, you're not freaking out. Now, what I'm looking for is evidence from other people, even anecdotal evidence, just from your own personal experience of what you're seeing in your supermarkets around you, especially from anyone who's in a bigger town. I do go to the city a lot, but I don't generally do my major shopping in there. So this is interesting stuff for me for Australia and New Zealand. However, UK and Germany is what I'm going to talk about now. Peter Rouse says low supplies in New Zealand. I think New Zealand's maybe in a slightly, you could argue both ways on this, a slightly worse position when it comes to importing goods in New Zealand. Australia has more buying power in the region. New Zealand has less people to use it up. It's 6 of one, half a dozen the other. But my kind of assessment, kind of maybe 60-40% Australia being better supplied in an emergency in the long run than New Zealand. Not that I think New Zealand would be in a bad position, though. Take the Ride says iodine for radiation poisoning is correct. Actually, fun fact, I just bought some iodine. I was just like, I don't actually think that I need it, but potassium iodine, I was like, there's a lot of stuff going on about nuclear, explosions and radiation and all that sort of stuff right now. And I just thought, can you buy that in Australia? So I jumped onto my favorite prepper website. That's Survival Supplies Australia.com.au. And they've got it on there. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll buy a packet just for shits and giggles, really. It's it's $30. So it's, not a cheap shits and giggles, but, maybe I can have a few less coffees this week. Anyway, got a couple of packets of it. And now, came in, sitting here right next to me with a whole heap of other cool gear that I hope to pull apart and review. I've just been too busy to put any of it up recently, but just interesting stuff that you can get access to it. Some people have been saying, this is a hard thing to get your hands on. It's a restricted thing. Maybe I think within Europe it might be hard to get your hands on it, but definitely here in Australia. And if I was like a real kind of I can't remember what the term for it is. It's like doomsday entrepreneur, or somebody who basically takes advantage of people's fear, right? So I think about the kind of people who are buying up massive rolls of toilet paper and then selling them off per roll to people at a much higher profit to them in that kind of situation. People who kind of look at, oh, yep, there might be some sort of petrol shortage, buy up a whole heap of petrol and then sell it off in certain countries. Can't do that in Australia, but sell it off on the side of the road to people at much higher rates in jerry cans. If I was that kind of person, which I'm not, this would be something that I would be thinking about right now. I'm like, can I buy up a whole heap of this and maybe look at places that might be a bit more in the zone that would be worried about this and start selling it off at a higher rate to individuals. But yeah, this is something that I predict could be unobtainable. It's called unobtainium. Sorry, that was a shitty reference. That's an Avatar reference. One of the worst lines in a movie, one of the shittiest pieces of writing, lazy writers I've ever seen in a movie. I'm watching this Avatar movie and I'm like, this is a cool movie, yep. And they go, this is what we're here for, unobtainium. I'm like, really? That's the name you came up with? Do better, James Cameron, do better. I know you probably didn't write it, but Peter Rouse rightly says, need to take iodine now, not after a fallout, because the way that the iodine actually works is, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's essentially blocking up the receptors so that the radiation can't actually get in there, or I'm blanking on the name of it now, can't actually get in there into the thyroid and bond with those receptors, because there's something already there, the iodine, the potassium iodine. Peter also put me onto nascent iodine, which I'm going to grab some of that as well. Because Peter, you said that's a much better alternative to the potassium iodine. As I said, I just got it for shits and giggles, just kind of as a test, like, can you get this stuff? Is that even possible? And yeah, within a week, it was in my house. It was in my hand. So just interesting sort of thing to think about. Take the Right also says salt for preserving and salt tablets, because your body has to have salt to survive. Correct. Yeah. One of those key kind of electrolytes that we require. Water alone ain't gonna cut it. All right, so specifically back to these stories, UK supermarkets resorting to rationing eggs. So there's some video footage of this that I saw. There's some photos. I don't know. I'm not on the ground there in the UK, but certainly there are some reports coming out, and especially centered around Tesco. Now, for those of you who follow me from the UK, you can tell me, I've been to the UK. I've actually spent a fair bit of time there. And Tesco is a very, very large chain of supermarkets. Maybe even the largest in UK. I want to say it's the equivalent of Woolies or Coles here in Australia. So very, very large. And they're saying that, look, we can't get the eggs in. Prices are going to go up through the roof. Not our fault, by the way. They're saying this is bird flu epidemic. It's all bird flu. That's what's driving this. So that's what their official counter to it was. But yeah, they're limiting how many people can buy. So at this stage, it's still at 2 or 3 boxes of eggs for each person, which, I don't know, here in Australia, that's a dozen eggs. I'm not sure what it is. I would imagine it's similar in the UK. That's a lot of eggs. But not the point. Not the point that I'm getting. Start to think about where eggs actually come from, and can you start to bring that into your life? If you're somebody who eats eggs, as I do, I just had a delicious scrambled eggs for breakfast. Then, where do we get eggs from? We get them from chickens. Can we get chickens into the backyard? So that's something that I'd be thinking about, certainly in these areas, even though they are trying very, very hard to restrict and even ban backyard chickens as well, especially in the UK and in Europe. So not good stuff. Germans. S. Wood, yes, there is an issue with eggs. It is hit or miss right now. So that's from the proverbial horse's mouth in the UK right there. I love how people are like watching me from around the world now. It always spins me out. I mean, it spins me out that anyone's listening to me, really, but certainly one of my intentions was kind of like, oh, I want to put this information out because there's not a lot of sources that are Australian, New Zealand from this neck of the woods, but worldwide news obviously affects us all, and so yeah, it's always interesting to me that there's people from around the world who are happy to listen to me, and hopefully there's something that I say that's worth your while. And you keep coming back, so I assume there is. And also, thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's all kinds of whack times of the day that you're listening to me, so I appreciate that you're jumping on. German meat industry warns of empty supermarket shelves as far as meat goes, and another, wait for it, 40% jump in meat prices. Not a nice steady incline, but a 40% jump in meat prices. Meat, eggs. I mean, we see where this is going, don't we? Like, they really, really don't want us to eat meat anymore. This is something that's really, really troubling because, as far as I'm concerned, let me put it this way. In case you haven't figured it out, I'm a big fan of meat. The other thing is that I have studied nutrition. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm a sports and exercise scientist, but as part of that, you actually have to study nutrition. So I've studied nutrition, and there is no, as far as if I plug in the prepper mindset as well, there is no long-term sustainable way of getting the nutrients and minerals that we get from meat in any other form that is at the quality that we can get from meat. So as far as I'm concerned, meat is an absolute must for us to survive and thrive as human beings in whatever way we do that. But there are good ways and there are bad ways. I think, like, your mass agriculture, your lot farms, you're packing in your sweatshop type setups of poultry. That's not good. That's not good. But like I keep saying, we need to start bringing this stuff back to the individual. We need to take responsibility for what we eat, for starters, the nutritional value of what we eat, but the creation and the manufacturing of said food products, i.e., we need to start learning how to grow our own meat, how to hunt our own meat, how to do things like skin and butcher an animal, how to store certain meat products, how to preserve meat products. This is the sort of stuff we need to do. And these stories, this stuff like this, that meat's going to be in short supply and it's going to go up by 40%, they're designed to get a fear spike. When news sources put this out, they're trying to elicit a fear spike because that grabs people's attention. And that's what news outlets want. They want your attention. Your attention is literally commodified. It is equated to dollars in their bank account. So they want your attention via fear. I read this and I don't get fear, I get motivation. I'm like, thank you. Thank you for giving me yet another reason to continue doing what I'm doing. And that's what I want to get across to you guys too. That's what I want you guys to do, is to look at this sort of stuff and don't go like, doom and gloom, shit, I got to go down and get to Costco and buy more tinned meat. Go, okay, that little plan that I had of getting a goat in my backyard, or that little plan I had of learning, hitting up that local hunter I know and asking them, hey, can you take me out and teach me how to hunt? Or is there something that I can exchange with you and maybe barter with you? And so next time you go hunting, I get a leg of a deer or something, and you get a whole heap of fresh veggies. This is why I'm putting this information out there, so that we're inspired to actually start doing these things, because this sort of stuff, this German meat industry coming out and saying, hey, things are going to get worse, this is the norm for the future that we're heading to. This shows me how utterly reliant the vast majority of human beings are on food sources that are way beyond their control, way beyond our control, I should say, or bring myself into this, way beyond my control. The people who are making my food that I'm eating are hundreds, thousands of kilometers away from me, sometimes the other side of the earth. How do I bring that back? How do I bring my food system back so it is within 150 kilometers around me? at the most. Peter Rouse says, need to take iodine. Organ meat even more important. Absolutely. It's always, whenever I'm out hunting with my hunting buddies, that's the first thing we harvest. That's the first thing we go in, pull the guts out, and it's heart, liver, kidneys. We might go brain as well. That's the thing we're targeting. That's the creme de la creme that we're looking for, because we know that that's the best part. That is actually the best part of the animal. For some reason, generally people hate that. Generally people hate that stuff, and I'm like, nah, this is the best shit. Like, kind of, I guess, nutrient per square inch, it is punching way above its weight. Like, not even in the same ballpark as muscle meat. Muscle meat's great. Muscle meat is fantastic, and we can make muscle meat taste like super fantastic with how we cook it and other accoutrements and spices and things that we put on it. But kidneys, liver, heart, these things are just absolutely life-bringing, life-enforcing pieces of meat. And these are the things that you really want to get into your diet. Plus, there's the whole, I guess, more spiritual side of hunting, where if you're going to honor an animal, you want to use every little part of it. And when I have seen that animal and I have shot at that animal and I've watched it die, I've taken its life, I want to honor that animal. I want to honor its life that it's given in order to sustain my life and the life of my family. So yeah, organ meat's a huge thing. We really need to start doing this. And so many organ meats are just thrown out. It drives me mental. Drives me absolutely crazy. Take the Ride says, people would be very smart to learn how to make bows and arrows from natural things around them and learn how to use one for hunting. Great idea. Norman Lacey says, hunting isn't a good idea to replace our current meat industry. We already have far too few wild animals left in the USA due to shrinking habitats for them. Yes and no. This is one thing that always interests me. It's current trajectory versus unknown unknowns. If we had on like wholesale people starting to go, okay, let's go out hunting, then I think we would start to see other initiatives come about, i.e. people would be very much pushing for more and more wild land, more and more ability, habitat, things like that, environment for wild animals to thrive in. Hello, wild animal. Do you want to come up here and say hi to everyone? Come on. There we go. Speaking of wild animals, this isn't one. Yeah, so there's those sort of unknown unknowns, and certainly I think, like, not everyone can hunt. Not everyone could just pick up a bow or a rifle and go out and hunt now. The ability is not there for many reasons. The ability within the human is not there. The ability within the environment to sustain that is not there at the moment. But if we had to do that, then I think we would see a radical change in our focus. I believe that we would prioritize our usage of land and our environment in an entirely different way. And we'll possibly stop thinking about things like, well, maybe it's really important that we have, here's something, this one key thing. I hate golf. All right. I hate golf. And every time I see a golf course, I look at it and go, that would be a pristine hunting ground. Why can't we convert every golf course into a hunting ground? And instead of people going in and paying exorbitant fees to go and hit a little white ball around, people go in and pay exorbitant fees to wander around for a couple of hours trying to hunt something. Curated animals that are there, that are looked after by groundskeepers and kept within that area, and made sure that their populations are at a level that are sustainable for people to do that. Just as an idea. However, another part of this is, I think if everyone had to hunt for their food, then we would have people who would waste far less of our meat. We would have people who would eat far less meat, because I think actually in reality, the amount of meat that we eat nowadays in the developed world is too much. It's way too much. The amount we waste is definitely too much, is way too much. So the total gross amount of meat eaten would come down. We would get it to a point where we eat enough meat, not too much, not throwing out a whole heap, but enough. And also, a lot of people would choose then not to eat meat, I think. That's my take on it, at least. If we had to hunt meat, if you had to go out and hunt meat day after day, some people would just go, no, I can't actually afford this in the spiritual sense. It is costly and it is hard to hunt. It is hard to take a life of an animal. From personal experience, it is difficult to do, and I don't think a lot of people would actually choose to do it. But yeah, I think that meat would actually get shared out in a different way. Not everyone needs to hunt. That's the thing. One hunter who gets one piece of big game, one good quarry, can now feed 5, 10, 15 people. So yeah, there's pros and cons to it, but maybe even the human race might shrink a little bit if everyone had to hunt, because some people just couldn't do it, couldn't survive. Take the Ride says you can eat so many things, including squirrels, rabbits, rodents, snakes. There's all kinds of meat. There's plenty of wildlife in the United States, unless you're living in the city, which is correct. I actually did this a few years ago, where I decided I'm not going to eat anything that's part of the big four in Australia, which is beef, pig products, lamb, or chicken. So I didn't eat anything from those four things, but I still ate meat. So a lot of the time I had to go out and hunt. But it really starts to think. People go like, "Well, you don't eat those four things. Like, what do you eat? There's nothing to eat." I'm like, there is literally every other animal, like literally everything. There is so much outside of that, and people just don't think about that sort of stuff. They're very limited in our bandwidth for considering what meat is and how it is created, how it is grown, how it is killed, how it is manufactured. The way we think about it is a very, very small fraction of how we could be eating meat. And to be honest, the way we do it nowadays is entirely evolutionarily novel. We've never really done it this way before, and now we're seeing some pretty funky things come out of it. I.e., just to pick one, obesity. That's probably the big obvious one that slapped us in the face. That we've got more obese people on the planet now than we ever have before in recorded history. So maybe we're not doing something right. So many people have dogs and cats. How are you going to feed them? You think they're going to eat lettuce if you grow it? No, they will not. Especially not that one that I just showed you. Won't go anywhere near anything green. But if I do get a rabbit, maybe accidentally run over a rabbit or something. If I do go and kill a goat or something, the parts that I'm not eating go to this one, and she loves it. So, we can go down a whole rabbit hole, I guess, of should we have dogs and cats? And my personal take on it is yes. You can argue against me with this one, definitely. There's certainly arguments that we shouldn't have domesticated animals, but that's actually the hill I will die on. I will not have dogs, and I will fight for it too. But Take the Ride is got a very good point here. Like, we actually need to think about preparing for our animals as well. Quite often when I say family, I don't go into it, what those family members are, but my dogs are part of my family. I consider them that. They are part of this unit. They provide something for this family as well. They are my early warning system. They are part of my security system within my house. They are part of my mental welfare system within me personally. There are many things that these dogs provide me. They force me out the door sometimes when I don't want to go out and get out there and go for a walk. Dogs provide me with a lot, and so they are part of my family. They are an integral part of my family, and I definitely do prepare for them. So I do stockpile things for animals as well, and this is something you need to think about if you've got pets, even if you've got livestock, i.e. chickens, goats, whatever you've got going on your own personal preps. You need to be preparing for them as well. Certainly, you shouldn't just think about these things as the expendable part where you're going, well, I've got the chickens and shit hits the fan, I'll eat the chickens. That's probably longer term thinking than a lot of human beings, but you need to think a little bit longer than that. How do you keep those chickens alive? Because they're going to provide you with eggs, hopefully. Or, maybe you can breed them, and then you've got future generations of chickens. So you need to think about that. All right, I'll let you out in a sec. I'm just going to wrap up this. We got to think people in the city will start eating each other when they get hungry enough. Yeah, that's always a disturbing thought, isn't it? Just speaking on that, I just got a whole heap of books, which I find really interesting. Fiction can sometimes teach us, that's the way I think about fiction. Fiction's like, I'm always learning. Every day is a school day to me. Fiction can teach us stuff. Here's a couple of fiction books that I will actually recommend, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but also a bit seriously for everyone out there. Max Brooks, okay? He's the son of Mel Brooks, very famous comedian. Love that dude's movies. Max Brooks wrote a little book called The Zombie Survival Guide. I picked this up. I just picked up a new copy because I lost my old copy ages ago, but I picked it up years and years ago, read it, loved it. It was a hoot. It's funny. It's, crazy, but also there are some lessons to be learnt out of that. Then he followed it up with a book called World War Z, which got turned into a movie. The movie has nothing to do with this book at all. All right. There's a whole heap of like legal rights going on. So the movie, the book, two totally different entities, but fun, good book. Anyway, I've just picked up this one. Haven't read it yet. Devolution by Max Brooks. I'm going to have a flick through that one somewhere down the line when I get a chance to, because it's I've got a big list of books at the moment. But you reminded me of that Take the Ride, because eating people, zombies, all that sort of stuff, cannibals, could happen. Could definitely happen. All right. Just going to wrap up with this little anecdote and this story here. I know a couple who are now split up, but this couple, they raised a couple of kids, and I was there for the whole thing. And I watched these two parents with two very different styles. One yelled at the kids a lot, screamed, like always, like at the drop of a hat would be, do this, don't do that, what are you doing? The other one was always very quiet, tried to lead by example, and when it was needed, would blow the top off as well and yell at the kids. Now, it was very interesting watching the kids react to these two individuals. The one who was yelling all the time, who was kind of the disciplinarian, I guess, after a few years, was all but utterly ignored. I would watch it because that person would start yelling and I'd be like, whoa, this is serious. And the kids would just be like, continuing doing it, like not even hearing it. It's just background noise to them. When the other person raised their voice, the one that was quiet a lot of the time, whoa, those kids, it was like the apocalypse had come. They would do anything. They would be bending over backwards going, this is serious. This is absolutely serious. Now, I'm telling this story because I saw this story today and it reminded me of this. Extinction Rebellion activists have worn out their welcome and the public is angry. Extinction Rebellion, Just Stop Oil, insert activist group here. There's a couple others that I'm blanking on. They've obviously been very active in the last couple of years and increasing in their activity over the past 6 months. And, I've kind of been throwing them up there every now and then and talking about these things because they're leading somewhere. And here's where it's leading. The public's going to get angry with them and pissed off because they're not targeting who they're angry at. They're targeting targeting paintings, famous paintings. They're public transport, targeting public transport. They're targeting highways and stopping people from driving and getting to work. Well, that's not targeting the people who are creating the issues that you're worried about. that's targeting the individuals, the human beings. And so what you're going to do is piss off the public. It's great to get your word out there. And again, I'm a big fan of anyone who wants to have their say. I'm a big advocate for freedom of speech, that we should all have our say and we should all be allowed to put our thoughts out there into the space. However, if you're doing it in these sort of aggressive matters, and if you're doing it the way these people are doing it, which is, I'm up here in my ivory tower, I'm better than you, and I'm telling you what to do because you're the bad person, eventually people are going to get pissed off with you, and they're going to stop listening to you as well. There's a better way we can do it. We can lead by example. Okay, we can start to move to the future that we want to see. If we want a future where we're not beholden on a government to, do the right thing, because they never freaking do, then we need to create that future. We need to actually take back those things that we've given over to our governments, that we've given over to other corporations, to other entities. People don't want to do that. That part of it sounds good. Hey, I want all the rights. I want my rights back. That's cool. But that comes with a lot of baggage, which is responsibility. We need to take back our responsibility as well and be willing to stand up as individuals and say, I am to blame. I am to blame here, and no one else can. I can't pass the buck. I'm not a victim here. All right. I am the one. I'm the sole one responsible for myself and for our family and for our communities, as I keep saying. So that's something I just want to put out there today, just as a bit of a thought for you to wander out into the world today. How can I take responsibility, not just dogs escaped, not just those quote unquote rights that we're looking for. All right, gang, that is it for today. Thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate it as always. If you've got any questions, please feel free to shoot them through to me. If you've got any stories that you would like thrown up here, send them through, or anything that you think that I would find interesting, because I don't have access to everything. So if you come across something like, oh, wow, yeah, here's something that's really cool, here, flick it through to me. If you've got any preps that you're particularly proud about and, want someone to give you a high five about, send them through to me, because I'm always willing to throw out a high five for anyone who's out there prepping. But apart from that, stay safe out there, whatever you're doing. Keep prepping, get out in the garden if you can. Keep thinking about that food system, because it's not getting better. And if you're in the US, stay warm, all right? There is, especially if you're in the northeastern area, in around Buffalo, 6 foot of snow apparently heading your way. So stay warm up there, gang. But apart from that, stay safe, keep your head on a swivel, and Semper Paratus.